It's been more than 10 years since Europa Universalis 4 has changed the way we look at maps. In fact, I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this know your history and your world geography a lot better because of the help that Europa Universalis has provided, be it the vanilla or the modded versions. Well, this game has had a long history and now it's time for it to have a successor. That is why today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Europa Universalis 5, what we know about it so far, what Johan has said, the leaks that we have on the Paradox forum. That's right, we'll be discussing Project Caesar, which is the code name for Europa Universalis 5. I'm also going to give you guys my opinion why Project Caesar is Europa Universalis 5, even though it's not officially declared so by Paradox yet. And I know some of you are probably aware about Project Caesar from the forums, but even the ones that have seen the Tinto talks, I think you're going to find some of the things that I say in today's video very interesting. Most importantly, as of yesterday, we have the very first screenshot or in-game images from the very early alpha of Europa Universalis 5. So I want to discuss today what we know about it so far, what timeline we're going to be expecting EU5 to be in, because Johan made a mistake in one of the screenshots that he posted yesterday. He didn't think about the fact that some of us will do a little bit of putting together 2 and 2, which is exactly what I did. And I think I figured out the date in which EU5 is going to be starting. And a little bit of spoilers, my previous video about EU5 was spot on with everything we know so far about EU5. Now on the 28th of February, I was DM'd by one of my friends and I was told that there's going to be a very secret post made in a few minutes on the Paradox forums that will be extremely interesting to me as an EU4 creator, and that I should pay close attention to it. After I was informed about that, I saw the forum post, and guess what? It's made by Johan, the developer for EU4, and it's entitled Tinto Talks 1, because calling it a dev diary for EU5 is cliche, I guess, at this point, because it's not yet announced, right? The point of this particular Tinto Talk number 1 was to establish with the player base that there is a game being developed, a second game being developed by the Tinto Paradox branch, the one that right now is making all the DLCs for EU4. You got to remember that the Tinto branch has been around for a couple of years now, and it has quite a few members, and despite being a large team, only a few of them are working on the next DLC for EU4. So if a handful of people are working on the DLC, the other 30 plus people, what are they doing? What was I saying in my previous video about EU5? That they're developing the EU5 because it's not possible for 30 people to just be working on a DLC when I know for sure that only a few of them are. This is literal proof right here. They're working on an unannounced game and they want our feedback, as well as they want to present to us their vision of this unannounced game. Now, from the 3 dev diaries that we have so far for EU5, and I'm going to call it EU5 in this video, okay? I think I have a little bit of a baseline for when the release date might be. I have 2 potential release dates I'm going to discuss, and I'm going to give the logic behind both of those. Let's go through this. I'm going to talk about the dev diaries, but I'm also going to give a little bit of talks outside of the dev diaries. So hang on tight and pay close attention, because I think you guys are going to really like this video. So let's see what Johan, the developer of EU4, says. Hello and welcome to, what is this really? It's a game called Tinto Talks. No, not really. First of all, Tinto stands for Paradox Tinto, the studio which was founded in Sitges, which is near Barcelona, in 2020. A few people moved down with me from Paradox to Spain, and we now have grown to almost 30 people. That is out of the way. What about Tinto Talks part? We have a little bit of a image here, which is likely going to be a loading screen for EU5. Probably not a loading screen. Maybe it's just some type of placeholder. I don't know. A long time ago, we started talking about a game as soon as we started working on it. Back in the long, almost forgotten past, we used to make games in about 8 to 9 months. I remember us announcing Viki 2 with just 2 mock-up screenshots and a half a page. But this changed a little bit over time, with first the rule of not announcing a game until it passed its alpha milestone in case it would be cancelled, as happened with Rune Master. And then when projects started going from an 18 months development cycle with games like EU4 to many years like our more recent games, the time from announcement to release has become much closer to the release date. This tells us that it's very likely that EU5 is going to be released within a year. So So there's a very specific reason Johan tells us we used to make games in 8 to 9 months. They don't do that anymore. And we know for a fact from what we talked about in my previous EU5 oriented video that they've been working on EU5 for at least a year now, if not more, right? And if they already have 1 year of development into the game, and they're definitely investing, like they say in the next paragraph here, 18 months of development in games like EU4 and so on, then it's likely that EU5 is going to be out next year, which means that the last DLC for EU4 is the current DLC developed, which I'm not sure if they announced the name, so I'm not going to say the name, but the one that's going to change everything, right, on the EU4 map one last time. Now, why does this matter? Well, from a development perspective, communicating with the players is extremely beneficial as it provides us with feedback, but if it's so late in development process that you cannot adapt to the feedback, then a development diary is just a marketing tool. Now, this also is extremely important. I love the fact that Johan wrote this dev diary because I can see the insight into what he's trying to get with this dev diary, and I also have my own insight which I can present to you guys. When Victoria 3 was being developed, they gave us an early access version of Victoria 3 to many multiple creators, I think 6-7 months, maybe even more before the release date, even before the announcement, right? We got the early alpha branch, but it was too late to actually implement a new combat system because everybody was saying the combat system needs changing, it's horrible. It was too late to implement a new combat system because it was too close to the release. So for EU5, if he's trying to get the feedback and also implement it, it's likely that it is at least 1 year. Now, if it is 1 year, that means next year, which is my first prediction, right? Announce it in ParadoxCon at the end of this year, release it next year, maybe for ParadoxCon, maybe a little bit earlier, who's to say? If it's March 2025 that it gets released, that's exactly 1 year. If it's September for Paradox 2025, 1 year and a half, that is the exact amount of time that he describes here, 18 months development cycle, to give enough time for EU5 to get properly developed and the feedback that we provide them to get implemented. I think games like Imperator might have looked differently if we had involved the community earlier and listened to the feedback. I love this man. I literally love Johan so much right there. He is aware that Imperator actually is a great game and has a lot of potential, by the way, and I have a video on that you can check in the description, and we should definitely bring back Imperator and start development in Imperator if you ask me. But he is aware that Imperator was not successful because it was not fleshed out. They didn't have the time to develop it. I remember he said in ParadoxCon that they developed Imperator in basically around 6 months. It was a passion-driven project for Johan. He invested a lot in it. He really wanted it to be an amazing game, and I personally think that it is an amazing game that had a really bad start. It got fleshed out with the 2.0 patch, but people just didn't give it a second chance. If we look back at EU4, this was from the first time we talked about air warfare about 10 years ago, and it has not much in common with the release version. Seriously, look at the screenshot. Look at this. Like, this screenshot is completely different from what EU4 is right now. Like, it's not even the same game. Even the graphics, even everything is completely changed from release date. And I see his point. I really see his point. But then he also mentions, however, talking about a game for a long time is not great for building hype either, and to be able to make proper huge announcements is an important part as well. That is why he's not calling this EU5, okay? That's why it's called Tinto Talks, and he's naming it as Project Caesar, which is the name that they give out these kind of games before they are actually released and announced. So this is essentially telling me they're gonna announce it soon, probably ParadoxCon. I repeat myself a lot, but I think everything I just read here reinforces everything I said in my video a few months ago. So I was right. All of you scumbags on the forums being like, hey, Ludi, no idea what he's talking about. Just wait till you see the third Tinto Talk, and then you'll see exactly how right I was about everything, okay? This subforum, Tinto Talks, we will be talking about design aspects of the game that we are working on. We will not tell you which game it is, nor will we be able to tell you when it will be announced or when it will be released. That's a good thing because just in case it needs more time to get developed, I would like them to take their time so they can properly develop the game, obviously. We will be talking to you here almost every week because we need your input to be able to shape the game into a masterpiece. Without you and your input, this will not be possible. So what about Project Caesar? They explain in this paragraph how they name games before release. Like I told you guys before, they give Roman leader names, like Imperator was Sulla, Victoria 3 was Caligula, and etc. In the second trimester of 2020, I started writing a code on a new game. I said in my video they started writing EU5 in 2020. Did I not say that? I freaking said that. And this year pretty much confirms it. Prototyping new systems that I want to try out, adapting the lessons learned from what had worked well and what did not work well. So adapting the lessons that worked and didn't work in Imperator, essentially. Recruiting for a completely new studio in Paradox Trinto, training people on how to make these types of games, whilst also making some expansions for EU4. So they get their training for EU5 by making expansions for EU4. Very smart. I like that. Today though, even though we are a fair bit away from announcing our new game, we want to start talking weekly about the things we're working on to get your feedback on it, adapt some of it to become even better. However, we'll start with the vision, which is not really something you do change at this stage. So the vision is there, they're not going to change the vision. So this is going to be important. Believable world. You should be able to play the game and feel like you're a part of that world, whilst not making the game less accessible. Features should be believable, plausible, avoid abstractions unless necessary. Setting, immersion. Our game thrives on players' imagination and what-if scenarios. We ensure both a high degree of faithfulness to the setting, which will give a special feel to the game. We will strive to give this game the most in-depth feeling of flavor possible. You have to realize they recruited for EU5, they recruited for Project Caesar some of the most flavor-oriented modders for EU4, including Will, or Big Boss as he's known in the modding community, which has created the Flavor Universalis mod, and other modders as well, that their main purpose was to make the game extremely flavorful. So those people are going to be working on EU5, or are working on EU5, so we can rest assured that we're going to get a game that we're going to be playing for the next 1,000 years. I'm just kidding. Oh, maybe in-game 1,000 years, but the world's going to probably end in like 30. It's fine. Replayability. There should be many ways to play different starts and reasons to replay them. Different mechanics in different parts of the world create a unique experience depending on what you choose to play. With a deep and complex game, there should be many choices and paths that the player should feel that they can always come back to with a new story and a new start. Sounds ambiguous, right? It's EU5, man. Just admit it already. It's EU5. I know you're not allowed to admit, but we know it's EU5. Let's just go ahead and say it's EU5. And we have Johan answering a few comments in the sections below. But let's go over and see the next dev diary. So Tinto Talks 2 came out on the 6th of March, and we have some images that are likely the map layouts for EU5. And we know that because the next dev diary also has some pictures of it, including a map of India, a layout of Asia altogether. But we'll get to that in a few moments. Let's talk about the second dev diary because this is very important as well. Now they start talking about the projection we chose for this game. In the past, we used the Mercator or Miller projection, which had several backdraws, as you are very well aware of. Yes, that what he's talking about is the way that the map's going to be designed and how it's going to look on your screen, right? As we are restricted to a cylindrical map, so we're not getting a globe. Remember that EU5 is not getting a globe. We had to pick the least bad of them, which is why we went with the goal stereographic projection. For those of you that don't know what a goal stereographic projection is, to make it really dumbed down, the middle of the map is shown as smaller than it actually is, and as you progress north and south, they are shown as bigger than they actually are. That's why Europe is bigger than it actually is on the world, on an actual world map, a proper one, right? And why the south, as you progress more south, it gets bigger as well, essentially, to make it very simple. Why is that a good one? Well, it keeps areas we care about the most, those in the middle latitudes, bigger without making the poles ridiculously oversized or the equators too undersized. It also has a reasonable, comfortable shape, meaning that the shape of the continents stay the closest to their real areas and angles without sacrificing a recognizable shape for them. Okay, that's fair. We can see the map here actually. There you go. This is actually what EU5 map is like looking right now. As you guys know, if you do a little bit of modding, this is one of the layers of the maps on your game, and this is the topographic one, essentially the one for the altitude and everything of the sorts. In most of our games set in the past, we use the word of province for the smallest piece of clay on the map. However, the map design we are doing for this game, it does not really theoretically fit, as the map is more granular and what people associate with the real world province would not fit. So we went to a terminology we had used in the code since the first game we made in the old Europa engine, which was location. So they're not called provinces anymore, they're called locations. You want to know how many locations they have? I'll spoil it. 27,000, man! They're gonna have 27,000 locations, as they're called in EU5. Wow! I'm gonna need to get me 5090 whenever that's gonna come out to play this game. Hopefully not, though. Let's hope the optimization is gonna be good by the time it comes out, right? Now, our smallest subdivision is referred to as a location, whilst a group of locations is a province, and a group of provinces is an area, and a group of areas is called a region, a group of regions is called a subcontinent, and a group of subcontinents is called a continent. If we take the home of Paradox Interactive, it's located in our location Stockholm, which is in the province of Uppland, which is in the Svealand area, Scandinavian region, part of Western Europe subcontinent, and the Europe continent. So exactly as you see on the map here. And I'm pretty sure this is the actual first political map image we have of EU5, which is in Stockholm. I'll be honest with you, I'm half coming right now, and the other half is getting OCD triggered because the names are not properly fitted on the map. It's kind of triggering me a little bit. Hopefully they fix that by the time it's out, right? Now you may wonder, why did we go with such granularity on a map like this? Well, this is entirely gameplay driven, from making a deep, engaging gameplay peacetime possible to better controlling the pacing of the game, and also to allow for more fun military campaigns. We also tried to make provinces as historical as possible when it comes to borders, while trying to keep the size of the locations consistent, with more or less regular progression from the smallest to the biggest, with our rule of thumb is that a location shouldn't have more than 3 times the number of pixels compared to a neighboring one. Okay, that's nice. I like to see that. I'm also thinking this has to do with a little bit of balancing everything around and not making it so that when you zoom into one area of the map, you're going to get massive lag spikes because there's too many in one small little side of the screen and another side has very few, right? So is the entire globe then divided into lots of tiny locations? No. There are 4 types of locations, and for these we have taken heavy inspiration from the maps of Imperator and Victoria 3, not EU4. Why Imperator and Victoria 3? Because Imperator was essentially meant to be a stepping stone, a test for the map design for future grand strategy games, and then CK3 was a result of the test from Imperator, if you ask me, with Victoria 3 being the latest iteration of it. Now take note, they did start development on EU5 around the time that they stopped development on Victoria 3, so whatever we're going to get in EU5 is likely going to be significantly better than Vicky 3. The first type of location is of the more uniform size. For a land location, this would be the normal location that would be settled, and for a sea location, this would be a coastal sea location or location adjacent to a coastal sea location. The second type is the sea current location, which connects coastal areas with each other, allowing travel faster in one direction. Okay, that's actually interesting. What this means, the sea current locations is going to make it so it's significantly faster for you to travel via predefined routes. So you guys know how when you travel from Europe to the US, or sorry, from Europe to the New World, it's faster to travel via certain sea lanes. Same, it's faster to travel via certain airways, for that matter, because of the way that the Earth is shaped, and they're gonna show that in EU5, which is, I think this is the first time that they do this. Well, technically no, in EU4 it's also faster to go through the north and through the center, but it's not a unique feature as it is in this game, right? The third is what we call an impassable wasteland, which can be used to describe parts of Sahara, Greenland, other places where it's hard for people to live. We also have what we currently call passages. These are land locations that cannot be settled by anyone, but they can still be traveled by armies with insanely high attrition. So we also have a confirmation that attrition is going to be in the game, right? Or to allow trade to pass through. Bum, 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 bum. I think they didn't intend us to... I don't think they realized what happened when they said this little part of that sentence. This tells me that the trade system is going to be completely different from EU4. To allow trade to pass through means that trade is going to be a fluid thing on the map. This tells me that trade is going to be maybe some carts that you take from one place to another, and if the connection is lost, then you will not be able to trade. This tells me that you will be able to destroy somebody's trade when you're at war by blockading their trade via land or via sea. This is fucking amazing, man. This means we're gonna have a better trade system than Vicky 3, than Imperator, than all the other trades, obviously better than EU4, right? Think of passages across the Sahara Desert. Okay, speaking of desert, in a lot of our games we define each province as having a single single terrain value like forest, tundra, or desert. This is rather limiting because eventually you end up with a huge list of complex things like Arctic forested hill or deserted mountain. What we have done in Project Caesar is take a deep look at what we did in Victoria 2. Oh my god, I love that. Where we had split terrain into topography and vegetation and take it further. Now we have 3 different values in each location: climate, topography, and vegetation. So it includes things like arid, continental, Arctic, then topography, flatland, hills, mountains, vegetation, forests, woodlands, farmlands, etc. So essentially, we're gonna have a much more complex system and much more flavorful and more impactful. So you could have, say for example, a flat area that is also a farmlands that is in a continental area, right? Or you can have a mountain area that is a farmlands. They freaking build farms in the mountains in these lands, okay? There's areas like that, but it's also an arid place. I don't know how you do a farmlands in an arid place, but it we might make it work. It's fine. This does tell me one thing though, and there's a reason why I started talking about farms, because this might mean that we likely will have a different system for buildings. It might be that buildings will be able to shape the land in ways in which we did not foresee before. What the actual gameplay impact of these is, we'll talk about much later, sorry. And now let's go to the final dev diary that we have here from the 13th of March. Before we talk about this dev diary, I just want to mention a few things, okay? I want to make a video with everything that I want to see from EU5, and I want you guys to write down in the comment section for this video everything that you want to see in EU5. I'll take your comments from today's video. I'll also take the comments from the previous EU5 video that I did a few months ago, because obviously things changed since we now have a lot more info about EU5 compared to before. So make sure you write the best ideas possible, and the next video that I'm gonna make it dedicated for Paradox, and I'll make sure that the development team in Paradox looks at the video and takes into account all of my recommendations, all of your recommendations, so they have a proper feedback now when there's still time to make these changes, rather than later when it might be a little bit too late, right? So now let's talk about the 13th of March dev diary. Welcome to the 3rd week of Tinto Talks, where we talk about our upcoming game, codenamed Project Caesar. Now they talk about the first of the 3 pillars, which is Believable World, which again has 4 sub-pillars, where 2 of them are important to bring forward today. Population. Hallelujah, we're getting population. I miss population. As a EU3 addict, I freaking loved population system, and the way that they describe the population system in this dev diary tells me that it's going to be an amazing population system. Not only that, this dev diary, they kinda unwittingly told me what the start date is, because boys, this particular cultural layout for India, and this particular thing here, and this particular thing here can only happen in a certain time frame, and that is in the 1300s. We'll talk about that in a few seconds. Let's go back here. The simulation of the population will be what everything is based upon: economics, politics, and warfare. So that means your population dictates how good your economy is, how much manpower you have, how strong and ready you might be for war, and politics. So EU5 is going to have probably a more in-depth political system than EU4 has, which is good. Simulation, not board game. Mechanics should fit like they fit together, so what you feel you play in a world, and not an abstract way to give the impression of being a board game. So what does that mean for Project Caesar? And now we have a map of the Indian subcontinent. This is very, very, very juicy. I have to say, this is extremely, extremely juicy. We saw this in previous comments from Johan on the forums and previous posts. EU5 is going to have maybe 1 or 2 start dates maximum. It's not going to have more than that. It's not going to have the entire timeline, because it's hard to re-edit when you release a new DLC all of the bookmarks, and it's also it provides a lot of spaghetti code that destroys the game slowly with more DLCs, and that's why CK3 only has 2 start dates. That's why Victoria 3 only has 1 start date. That's why Hoi 4 has 2 start dates, and so on, right? So EU5, I can guarantee you, is going to have 1 or maybe 2 start dates at the most, which kind of tells me this is one of the 2 start dates possible, this image here, or maybe they just tried to fool me and they played the game before taking the screenshot. Who knows? That's possible as well, right? Every location that can be settled on the map can have pops, or as we often refer to them in Project Caesar, people. Most of the locations have people already from the start of the game. Today we talk about how people are represented in our game and hint at a few things that will impact the game. A single unit of people in a single location can be any size from 1 to a billion. What the fuck? A billion, okay? As long as they can share the same 3 attributes: culture, religion, and social class. This unit of people we tend to refer to as pops. So for example, we have culture, Catalan, Andalusian, Swedish, etc., religion, Lutheran, Catholic, etc., social class, and we have 5. And pay close attention here, because this is very, very reminiscent of a certain game. EU4. Nobles, these are the people at the top of the pyramid. Clergy, which represents the priests, monks, etc. Burghers, these come from the towns and the cities of a population. Peasants, the bulk of the pop, and slaves only present in countries where it is legal. So what does this what do the first 3 remind you? What game do these remind you of? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We can tell here that they have some type of ledger, and they typed in Tara for Tarragona, which is the province in Catalonia, and we have peasant, Catalan, Catholic, and the amount of population. So as long as a population has the same 3 stats within a province, they will be piled up together. You can imagine that in a province like this, you would not have nobles that are Andalusian Muslims, because you would not be able to get Muslim nobles in a Catholic country in the 1300s, right? Also, this year shows me that whenever I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that they took the screenshot of this particular population at the start of the campaign, and Sephardi Jews with almost 50% Andalusian peasants, or better yet 30% Andalusian peasants in Tarragona, is set exactly in the Muslim period of the 1300s. So this is prior to Granada being the last holdout of the Muslims in Iberia. In the 1300s, it was not as clear as it is in 1444 that the Muslims were basically kicked out, right? And they still had a pretty sizable population in the Iberian Peninsula, which is what we have here, a sizable Andalusian population. There are a few other statistics related to a pop, where we first have their literacy, which impacts the technological advancements of the country they belong to, and it also impacts the pop's understanding of their position in life. Another one is the current satisfaction, which is if it becomes too low, it will cause problems to someone. Satisfaction is currently affected by the country's religious tolerance of their religion, cultural view of the primary culture, the status of their culture, general instability in the country, several things we cannot talk about just yet, and of course, special scripted instances, basically special events that will trigger in the campaign. There are also indirect values and impacts from a pops on the military, economical, political part of the game as well, which we will go to in detail in future development diaries. Ha! You called it a development diary. It's not a Tinto Talk. You called it a development diary yourself. Ha! Sorry, I had to do it. I'm just so excited, man. I think I haven't been this excited for anything in, I don't know, a really long time. I'm so hyped for EU5. It's unbelievable. Population can grow or decline over time, assimilate to other cultures, convert to other cultures, or even migrate. Now, guys, this also tells me that it's going to be close to impossible to do a one culture, one religion run in EU5 unless there's some mechanics that really boost up assimilation and culture conversion really fast. Population converts to another culture and to another religion significantly slower. You have some ways of influencing that conversion, but it's not a direct thing that you can do like in EU4 where you use mana points to convert the culture. You don't have that in EU5. That's not the case. It's something that happens slowly based on the things that influence the population in that particular province. Most importantly here though, while population is the foundation of the game, it is a system that is in the background and you will only have indirect control over it. Exactly what I said. You're not going to be able to directly just change the culture with some mana points. That's not going to be a thing. What about performance then? One of the most important aspects of this has been to design the system and code it in a way that it scales nicely over time in the game and has no performance impact. Of course, now we talked about how detailed our map is with 27,518 unique locations on the map, and with many of them having pops, you may be worried. I am. 14 years ago, we released a game called Victoria 2 that had 1/10 of the amount of locations, but we also had far more social classes, or pop types, as we call them there. That game also had a deep political system where each pop cared about multiple issues and much more that we don't do here. That's great, because I don't want to play Vicky 3. I want to play EU5, okay? If I want to play a pop in which politics is half the game, then I'll play Victoria 3. I'm glad to see that he wrote this. I was really looking forward to see him write this, because this gives me the faith that EU5 is not going to be a game in which I'm going to spend half the freaking time trying to appease from a political standpoint every freaking peasant and their mamas, you know? All in a game that for practical purposes was basically not multi-threaded in the game logic and was still running fast enough at release. So yeah, that's true actually. Victoria 2 performance-wise was pretty great overall. I cannot complain about the performance for Vicky 2. Now we're building a game based on decades of experience, and so far the performance impact of having melting pops is not even noticeable. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Next week, we will talk about how governments work a bit, but here's a screenshot that some may like. Greek, Bulgarian, a Romanian, Armenian, Arvanite, predominantly Orthodox, 97%, 1.2 million population, Bogomilism, Judaism, Miaphysitism, and Catholicism, peasant, clergy, clerics, nobles. Okay, how do I know the start date of this game? Aside from the map screenshots shown earlier, this is clear evidence of the start date. So this is obviously going to be the province of Constantinople. So this is the layout of Constantinople at the start of the campaign, with 75% of it being Greeks, 18% being Bulgarians. We got some Romanians, Armenites, Armenians, and Arvanites. Now, there's no Muslims. We have, most importantly, Miaphysitism and Bogomilism. Now, some of you know that Bogomilism and Miaphysitism are essentially heretical doctrines of Christianity, of Eastern Orthodoxy more precisely. And by the 1300s, there were still some around. Bulgarians predominantly were followers of Bogomilism from the 900s, and very, very few of them remained around in the 1300s. In the 1400s, I do not think we would have 20,000 of them in Istanbul, or sorry, in Constantinople. See, I dropped my pen because I said Istanbul instead of Constantinople because I'm a heretic scumbag, clearly. But yeah, Miaphysitism, though, again, a heretical religion according to Eastern Orthodoxy, right? Might have been around in the 1300s. I do not think they would have been around in the 1400s because they did get massively eradicated by Timur, actually. Tamerlane was a big fan of wiping out the Miaphysitites. Anyway, that being said, this layout of the culture here, with the Greeks being predominant, Bulgarians, Romanians, which is basically a Romanian south of the Danube in essence, Armenians, and Arvanites. Arvanites are essentially Albanians that migrated to Greece in the 13th century, that means 1200s, and by the 1300s, a sizable amount, few thousand of them, did make their way to Constantinople, of course. There's no Islam in this province, there's no Muslims, there's no Turks. That means this is prior to any Turks having entered the Constantinople area. And how do I know so sure that it's Constantinople? How do I know it's not some part of Greece proper or some part of Bulgaria? Obviously, 1.2 million population or 1.5 million population. No other area in the entirety of Europe, or better yet, in the entirety of the Greek area, would have had this much population and this type of multiculturalism. Okay, so it's clear that this is the province of Constantinople. I'm not sure this is final or if it's just bait. Maybe they're baiting me. I hope it's not bait, but if it's bait, then I see what you did there. I see exactly what you did. That being said, though, judging from the religion, the cultural layout, I do think it's sometime in the 1300s that the game is going to start. They also mentioned previously, you guys know in my previous video that I did about EU4, that I did about EU5, how they want to have a start date that is extremely impactful in the late Middle Ages from a historical standpoint, and not one of the start dates that they had previously in one of the other timelines of EU4, in one of the other Europa games, right? So that means no 1444, no 1453, no 1399. So what else is there left? Something in the 1300s for sure. 1356 maybe earlier, maybe a little bit later, who's to say? But later probably not so much, because then the Ottomans would be a presence in this area, right? There's gonna be more dev diaries, and I want you guys to also let me know if you want me to continue to cover these dev diaries. I'm genuinely really curious to know if you like this kind of video. I just wanted to make this video because I had a stream the other day, and it really made me think that if this game is done well, this is likely going to be the greatest strategy game ever. And I made this video specifically to see your feedback and to give your feedback to Paradox so they do their job knowing what the community wants. Also, I'll leave the forum link in the description below of this video. Make sure you go to the forum as well and check it out. Leave comments there for yourself. Tell them Ludi sends his regards, and tell them to add plus 100 discipline to Prussia, just because it's historically accurate, really. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, you're gonna love my Imperator Rome video up next. And I want to give a massive thank you to all of my patrons, channel members, and Twitch subscribers. I would not be able to do this without all your support.